你而家收睇嘅係加拿大財經一號電視台。
加國地產發展趨勢，近期樓市最新動態，地產行業權威發布，眾多專家分析點評，盡在置業加國。Hello everyone, welcome to Realty Canada. As we are toward the end of March, here we are today to give you the pre-spring market updates along with what are the important factors when buying and selling at GTA. Today we got Tom Story join us, an agent from LePage. Hi Tom.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's your first time joining us, so why don't you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tom Story. I'm a residential real estate agent. We focus very much in the core of Toronto, the 416 area. I run a team at LePage Signature Realty called the Story Team. So it's me, my team members Cam and Morgan. We sell a lot of condos downtown, and we've been actively selling real estate in Toronto almost about 5 years now.
Okay, we're gonna start with our questions on the market topic, and we're getting into the spring. So how is the market doing for the past month or two?
Right, so when we look at what's happening in the market in Toronto right now, you almost have to break it down into two different segments because there's almost two markets happening at once. You have your freehold market, which is semi-detached and detached properties, and then you have your condominium and townhouse market. Now, what it comes down to is inventory levels in both those markets. So, in the detached home market, your average price in the core of Toronto is still $1.3 million. So, you know, it's still the most expensive price point that you can be at. When you look at semi-detached, we were at $985,000. Then you go down to townhomes that were at about $770,000. And condos were at $570,000. So still by no means is it cheap to live in Toronto.
Yeah.
As we've seen over the past 5-10 years, every year we have seen an increase in price. I think it comes down to a few factors. But the main thing is that there's just not enough supply for the amount of demand that we're seeing on a year-over-year basis.
So what are the factors that affect this dropping immediately?
In terms of the price points?
Yeah.
So what's happened is the detached home market at the height of the market when things were going a little bit nuts last year from January until April. So to take you back, when we started 2017, the average price point was $770,000 across the entire GTA. By the time we got to April, it was up to $920,000. So that was a 26% increase in 4 months. And that's not sustainable. So the only people that really benefited from that were people that were completely exiting the market and going and moving to something much smaller. But if you were buying and selling or selling and buying, you still had to, you were doing it in the exact same market.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened. Now, when fair housing came into place on April 20th, there was two main changes. There was the foreign buyer tax and there was rent control. But I think what it did more than anything was psychologically, when the government comes in and makes changes in any market to try and stop the demand so prices wouldn't keep increasing, I think just people take a step back and they go, okay, well, if the government came in, this must be really important. So that's why we've seen that when we're comparing the numbers this March and next month in April back to 2017 where we saw the historic price growth, they're going to look low. But if you go back 3 years, they're still up 30% in the city of Toronto. So it's really how you look at the numbers, and you almost have to look on a longer term scope than just year over year or month over month.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying like real estate investment is not like short-term flip, right? It's better to look at it for long term.
Absolutely. Something that we actually talk to most of our clients about is, you know, if you're buying, try to buy and hold for at least 5 years. Now that will help you change any fluctuation that happens in the market, whether there's rate increases, whether rental prices go down, which probably isn't going to happen.
Right.
One thing we have seen in terms of if you're buying strictly for investment, it's a little bit different than if you're buying for yourself to live there, right? So if you're buying for investment, it's a numbers game. You want to make sure that the numbers work.
Right.
So one thing that we've seen since rent control came into place, the goal of rent control was to stop rentals from going up because the landlords could basically, after the first year, increase it whatever they wanted. It was tough because this was tenants that were potentially, if you were living month to month and you were at your max, this is hard for people. So I completely understand why rent control came in. What I think happened though is it was a short-term solution which cause a long-term problem.
Well, as you just mentioned, due to a lot of policy change, also the mortgage rates going up, so a lot of people are choosing condos over townhouse because of affordability, right? So why do you think the condo is still in high demand at the market?
Well, the first thing that I think it comes to is lifestyle. So with the condominium market, you're getting your first-time home buyer, you're getting your people in the 50s that are making an early downsize, and then you're getting your people that are slightly older that don't need to go into retirement homes but still want a large space. And they it's lifestyle. You want to park your car underground. You want to make sure you don't have to shovel the snow. You don't have to deal with gardening. So you have every angle of the market coming in to the condos. Now what happened with the OFC regulations is that if you were affected by this, if you're taking a fixed term mortgage, it decreased your purchasing power by 17 to 20%. So what happened is the people that were looking to buy that semi-detached home or that townhouse, it pushed them into the condo market. Now, when there's more demand in one segment of the market, obviously the prices are going to continue to go up. So year over year, condos were up a significant amount, more than any other asset class. I think it was almost 15%. And we're going to continue to see this moving forward because they can't build them fast enough. And if you look around the city of Toronto, a lot of people say, oh, there's cranes everywhere. How is there not enough condos? Well, the fact is they can't even break ground on any of those properties unless they sell out 70% of the inventory. So all those condos you see being built, they've already been purchased, right? They've been sold. So I think something that has happened is that anything under 700,000, which is typically the biggest segment of the condominium market, there was just so much demand because everyone that was looking at that freehold property has been pushed into this market with the new OFC regulations, and there's been 3 key interest rate hikes in the past 8 months. So I think moving forward, there's a big price gap here. So your average condo price in the 416 was $570,000. Your average, just to get into the freehold market, was a semi-detached at $950,000. So this gap, which is like this, if condos continue to move and semis kind of stay where they are, at some point, they can't move at that pace where people are going to jump up to the semis. But unless that gap gets closer together, I think moving forward, condos will remain the most in-demand option because they're the most affordable option for people.
Yeah, also when you talk about lifestyle, I think I read this stories about how younger generations, they want to choose condos over the townhouse because they don't want to take care of all of the two works, right?
I think as we're seeing, as we move
and
forward,
we can see a lot of 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom even, the condos coming up to the market, right?
It's actually really neat to see. You look at certain areas of Toronto that are condominium built communities. You look at Fort York and Spadina with City Place. You go a little bit more west to Liberty Village. When these were first built 10 years ago, your average person living there was someone in their mid-20s, a young professional, there was no kids. Over time, you're seeing them transform where people are raising families in condominium type properties, and the city is noticing this. So in the City Place community, they're building 2 schools and a community center right across from all the condos because there's massive demand, because people are having kids, and because prices have continued to rise where not everyone can now afford to jump up into that house. And I think condo living for families is just going to become the norm.
Well, we heard a lot of people are afraid to buy and sell at this time. Obviously, the uncertainty of the market play a big role into people's minds. So what do you think is the big factor to affect buying and selling?
I think the biggest thing that people should focus on is something called months of inventory. Now, what's happening in the overall market is extremely important, and you should understand that if you're trying to get into the market. But what's most important is, okay, if you're looking to sell your home, what's happening in that pocket, and then what's happening in the pocket of the city that you're looking to move to. So months of inventory is just basically a fancy way to say absorption rate. So every single month we have a certain amount of active listings, and then for all the sales that month, we take the active listings and divide them by number of sales, and that gives us a number that we call months of inventory. So anything under 3 months of inventory, we would show as a seller's market. Now what that means is if today nobody else listed their property, in 3 months, every listing would be sold out. That's the rate at which they're selling. When we get to 4 to 6 months of inventory, that's a balanced market where there's enough for people to buy, they're not selling out too quickly. As you go to 6 plus, that becomes a buyer's market. Now, in the core of Toronto, we haven't seen that for a long time. But if you look into the suburbs of the GTA, there are some markets that are getting up there and are turning into more buyer's markets. So overall, I think just being educated of understanding not just what's happening in the entire market, because what's most important to you if you're looking to get into the market or sell your property is what's happening in your little pocket. Because real estate is hyper-specific, and the overall market is just a piece of it.
Well, as the weather is getting warmer and warmer, and usually the springtime is a big time. It's a good time for a real estate transaction, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think the sales is going to go in for the next few months?
So over the next few months, I think historically we look at the spring market and there is always more listings that come to the market.
Right.
Now it's a trade-off because you get more listings, but then there's more active buyers, so competition might actually go up.
Go up, yeah.
So something to notice of when we started this year, from last year until what's happened so far in January and February and March, the overall sales have been down. Now, prices haven't necessarily gone down, but overall sales have. So that's something that as we move into the spring, I think you're going to see the sales jump up. But again, we have to remember that we're comparing them to last March and last April when when the craziness happened. So, you know, we have to kind of look at the numbers with a grain of salt that, you know, less home selling isn't actually a bad thing. People not wanting to sell their homes means they like where they live. But what happens when the weather gets nicer, people get back into their regular routine? You know, it's nice out. People, you know, the kids are in school, you're not worry about that. You're back from March break. It's a great time to list your property and get out there and start seeing some open houses. So I think if you just look historically, yeah, we're gonna have more sales happen in the next few months. It starts to quiet down into the summer at the end of July and August, as that's basically cottage season for people. You know, the kids are out of school and they don't want to deal with doing that, and then it ramps up again as you get into the fall market. So it's really based on lifestyle of when the market goes up and down. Average price-wise, historically, spring is the best time to sell your property.
So overall, at the end of this year, do you think the price is going to catch up by as compared to last year's?
So it's funny, when you look at the peak of the market in 2017, you're at the very peak in April, your average condo price was $586,000. Now this year, our average price last month was already $570,000. So that's gotten really close. But if you look at the detached home market, at the peak of the market, your average price was $1.6 million, and now we're at $1.3. So it's taking the different market segments, and with these new government interventions, it's harder to get approved for more money to buy a property. So it's going to take the freehold property market longer to catch up to where the peak of the market was. So there's three factors that we really have to focus on moving forward, which are the biggest things we have to look at for what could happen in the market. The first is immigration. So, you know, Canada is a great place to live, and a lot of people want to immigrate here. You know, last year there was 250,000. That was the max limit from the government of Canada. They've upped it to 300,000. So these newcomers into Canada are coming to the urban centers, whether it's Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal. They're coming in and they need housing. So if that continues, and the population of Toronto, especially downtown, they're saying is going to 4 times at some point. So again, we have not a lot of land left. So that's why condo ownership moving forward is still going to be something that is just going to be the norm. Number 2 that we have to look at is interest rates. So even though they've gone up a little bit, you look on a historic chart of interest rate, you know, it's not 17%, it's 3.5% you're borrowing money at. So as long as that interest rate remains, I would say, under 5% at a healthy rate, because that's still not that bad if you really break it down. We've just been so used to borrowing money at 2.5% for the past few years. And then the third one to focus on is unemployment. So the City of Toronto released numbers a month ago saying that they're at a 17-year low for unemployment, which is a really good thing. So more people getting jobs. And something that we have to focus on is, I don't personally think Amazon headquarters is going to come to Toronto, but if they do, that's 50,000 workers with an average salary of $100,000. They would have a massive impact on the Toronto market.
So a lot of good things is going to happen in Toronto, so the market is going to be stable, right?
I think if those 3 fundamentals remain in place, we're going to be okay. So the last time that the Toronto market had actually seen any downturn was in the early 90s, where it took almost 10 years to get back up to that peak price. At the time, immigration was low, interest rates were extremely high, and unemployment was high. So right now, all those are still looking very good moving forward. So unless 2 of the 3 of them change, I think it's going to be pretty healthy.
Thank you so much, Tom, for coming today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.